Hello, everybody, and welcome to another adventure in history. I'll be your wasteland warlord for the afternoon. And Green Herring is Spartacus. I'm Spartacus. Green Herring, thank you so much for 18 months. That's two Twitch babies. Two Twitch babies. I can't remember what the name of our first Twitch baby was. I don't even know if we picked a name for it or not, but I never remember the names of any of my Twitch children. So I'm a horrible father. What's up, DCI Banks and Matt and Viper? How are you all? Hope the world is going well for everybody. It's a Tuesday that feels like a Thursday, and oh man, I was not feeling it today. I came home and my wife was sitting out on the porch. We've got a screened-in porch and rocking chairs, and I sat down in the rocking chair and we were talking, and then I fell asleep. I'm becoming that guy that comes in and sits down and falls asleep in the afternoon. And I used to make fun of my dad for doing that, but now I'm totally becoming that guy. This week has been an interesting one already. And I don't know if it's just my attitude or my outlook or something, but I was just sort of in a bad mood today. Didn't really have any reason to be in a bad mood other than, whatever reason you're ever in a bad mood. But, yeah, I wasn't feeling it very well today. So, alas. But yeah, it's viewer request night. This is a viewer request that was purchased by points by Lumpy Dragon Potato, but if he didn't buy it, I think Tad Muzzletop was going to buy it, so I think this one was going to happen regardless. I think it had actually shown up in some votes previously, and it just didn't get picked. Either way, it's here now, so we're going to be exploring the Arctic tonight. This is one of those topics where it's just way too broad, like what exactly qualifies as Arctic exploration. This is a very long period of time where a lot of things happened, so it's a bit of a hodgepodge of stuff tonight. Yeah, I mean, I wasn't in there's not really any reason for me to have been in a bad mood except for the fact that I was in one. And I tried to, I didn't let that out in class. I actually had some pretty decent classes today, some good conversation, especially in my 11 o'clock class. We had some really good conversation in there. And then I went back to my office and was just like, right? What's up, Zippy? How's things? Yeah, here we go. I guess we can go ahead and kick it off and get ourselves underway. This one might suffer a bit from being too broad, but also out of fear of digging too far into one particular area of this. So it's a bit of an all over the place kind of thing. I don't really know if I put this one together very well, but we got what we have, right? So, what is Arctic exploration? What even counts as Arctic exploration? Yes, we know it's this, but what about it? How far back are we talking? What's the time frame for Arctic exploration? Well, I didn't really know what that was. I didn't get a lot of clarification. I assume I could have asked or should have asked perhaps, but I just decided to go with, I don't know, what's the oldest place that we've ever been up in the Arctic? And I'll be honest, I didn't know a lot about this topic. I had to do a lot of research on this. It's not something that immediately tickled my fancy. I wasn't gung-ho about doing this episode. But that's okay, right? It's a viewer request episode. It's not a Shane request episode. I have every Thursday to do whatever the heck I want to do, right? So, What evidence do we have of people north of the Arctic Circle? Uh, that's a great question. And we have a little bit of stuff, but it's not a lot. And the oldest stuff is actually over here in Russia, up in this region over here, which is pretty friggin' cold and not very hospitable. And you might go, what are people doing up there? Well, they're killing a lot of stuff up there. Ice Baby. See, I thought about that. It would have been too on the nose. There wouldn't have been a pun there. It would have just been like a double entendre, which I guess is a kind of a pun, but I don't know if it necessarily met all of the criteria. I did think about that one, though, Kyle. What's up, also, Kyle? And hey, Lumpy. Cold as ice, and see, that's another one that's like, just like, it's right on the nose. Both absolutely logical, just there's a level of pun that I want to have, where you see it and you groan a little bit. And that groan is very important to me. So, do you want to build a snowman? Again, just sort of like on the nose. Okay, so where should we start looking for people? Well, the oldest information that we have is at this place called Yenisei Bay. And at Yenisei Bay, there is a really big location that was excavated that was a Stone Age kill site. So basically, they started excavating this location, and they just found a ton of dead animals. And these were obviously animals that had not died of natural causes. They found things like butchering marks on the bones that came from stone tools. And they also just found way too many of them in various parts of disarray for it to be some sort of naturally occurring location. So they decided this had to be human, and they did some radiocarbon dating on it, and it showed up 43,000 BC, which is crazy old for people to be that far into the area. And again, this is over here in this little sort of region right here of Russia. So this is way, way, way up in Siberia, right? It's way up there. And this pushed the timeline of people being in the Arctic back about 10,000 years, which is not an insignificant number when you're talking about the history of humanity, especially when we're talking about things like human migration patterns and where we were at any given point. Being at a location 10,000 years earlier is a big deal. This, of course, is going... When this stuff all got published, it literally had us rewrite the pathway. How did people get to Europe? Now we have to contend that they may have come this far from the north down through Europe because, now they're all over here, basically. Not just skirting along the Caspian Sea or Black Sea coastline to end up in Europe. Maybe they're actually coming out of the Arctic this way, right? Because all of this would have been under ice caps at that point anyway, so maybe they were still following herds of megalithic animals. We don't really know. Almost halfway to the Arctic monkeys. I wonder what pushed them up so far. Following the herds, almost certainly. These were people that would have been hunter-gatherers. This is way, 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 way before we would have had any sort of domesticated animals. These would have been people that were chasing mammoths or chasing reindeer, and just following them on their regional migrations throughout the course of the year. So they just kept coming back to this same location and being successful with their hunt. And, if you're being semi-nomadic and you're following the same route, over the course of generations, you're going to start figuring out where the animals go, and you're just going to figure out where is a hospitable place to stay over, a period of maybe several weeks to a month. And they just started dumping all their bones in the same spot. So, what up, Allie? Good to see you. They changed the dino dance and you feel betrayed. I don't actually know exactly what the dino dance used to look like. Um, so we're talking about the oldest people that would have ever been located in the Arctic Circle. And this particular location at Yenisei Bay dates to about 43,000 BC. Plate tectonics are always something to talk about, but at that point, the continents are in the modern locations. Plate tectonics is going to be a sort of a scale in the millions of years. The human migration patterns have all effectively been along the continents as they are. A But this doesn't mean that the continents looked exactly the same that they look now. The more functional question is, what did the sea levels look like at that time? Because this would have been very firmly within the last ice age, right? So what did the sea levels look like? And they would have probably been spending most of their time on pack ice. Yeah. So glaciers are absolutely going to push around mountains and level stuff out and move things and change the course of rivers. 100%. 100%. So all fair questions. Polar bears are Irish. I don't know. I mean, it wouldn't necessarily surprise me if the original and the like old school ancient polar bear. Okay, so here's a. Oh, it's from the Guardian. Yeah. That's a trusted name in news. I just pick. Modern polar bears are partly descended. Oh, so they're only part Irish. They're only part Irish. They're like me. They're not completely Irish. Interesting. Ireland wasn't even an island at that point, though. Ireland was part of a larger landmass that wasn't specifically just Ireland, so I don't know if you can claim all of them. Uh, Now I'm just trying to be persnickety about stuff and be contrary. Anyway, so Yenisei Bay, 43,000 years. Now, that's just people moving through, right? What about the oldest people that lived there? Uh, People that are living in the region permanently. And that's going to bring us to another location that's called the Yana Rhinoceros Horn Site. You're like, oh, that sounds like a lovely place. I'd love to go visit the Yana Rhinoceros Horn Site. I mean, I can show you some pictures of it because this is actually well publicized, and it's a pretty cool place. And you're like, oh, that looks like really crappy pictures from an archaeological dig. Yeah, obviously it is, but, you know, I can tell you what we're looking at here. The important thing for us to note in our site here are the markations of these things, which you can see here. These are hearths, which means that there was a permanent dwelling here, and people used these particular locations for permanent cooking. And you can see here all of the bones that they dug. Look at the bones, right? They would have been living here permanently and hunting animals and supplementing that with fish. These permanent dwelling sites are not something that we should confuse with cities. A permanent dwelling site is not a city. This would have been maybe a few families, maybe a village, and it's not necessarily something where we would have 100% lived completely year-round. This is just, we know that we have a dwelling place that's here. This might be our summer home, right? We might move back and forth between these locations, a couple of different locations during different times of the year. This is not people living in a big old city. If anything, this would barely qualify as a village, but it's important because we know that it's there. Those are located to as far back as 30,000 BC. Which is why I'm making such a big deal about them not being in a city, because there weren't cities at that point. There are just people moving into certain areas and sort of spending a longer time in this area instead of wandering the entire year. Especially with this being a little bit closer to the sea, there would have been ample opportunity to supplement diet with things like fish. Now, so we've got people in the Arctic that are building dwellings as far back as 30,000 BC, or at least hearths as far back that far. Who's the first person to ever get there? Do we know the person's name to ever get inside the Arctic Circle? People 50,000 years ago having summer homes, right? We don't know the name of anybody for sure, except we have a record of this guy named Pythias. And you're like, that guy sounds like a liar just off the top of the head. And he may very well have been. Pythias was a Greek guy, and he's from this place called Massalia, which is modern-day France. And the story goes, and of course he's writing the story, that he sailed up the coast of Europe and around into the Atlantic, and he was supposedly looking for where the metal tin originated. And this is the story, like he's searching out the location of Steve Sketches bringing in a party of 72. That's what we're looking for here, right? What's up, Steve Sketches and crew? Welcome in, everybody. Hope you're doing well. And give a good old shout out to Steve, but I suspect that all of the people that were in my chat prior to Steve showing up already know who Steve is. But you should go follow Steve Sketches because he's a cool guy. For those of you that might be coming in brand new, my name is Shane. Hello. I teach history and sociology at college, and my stream is basically not boring history. This is particularly tonight a viewer request episode, so the viewers of the channel asked me to talk about this stuff. Michael Howe Arts, thank you so much for the follow, and welcome to the adventure. So viewers wanted to know about Arctic exploration, and so we're talking about it, but I sort of just kind of chill out and hang out and talk, and we make bad jokes and puns, and we end up going off on tangents, and I'll talk too much about things that I probably shouldn't on stream. But I don't like the fact that people think history is boring. It's not really my thing to think history is boring. So I try to make it more interesting, and I talk about a lot of stuff that doesn't really get covered in the traditional, what we might call Western approach to teaching history in a school. On Thursdays, if you come back, we're doing history in chronological order. So we literally started before humans had opposable thumbs, and now we're all the way up till we're about to actually start a new sort of trip around the globe, and we're going to be looking at sort of the pivotal movements that happen coming out of the global medieval world. So we're going to be looking at like the 1400s and how just absolutely crazy that period of time was across the globe. So that's what we're doing on Thursdays, and you can come back same time, same channel, and check that out. This Thursday we're going to be talking about Japan. Last time we talked about Japan, we wrapped up the Heian era, which is really, really important for Japanese culture, and we're moving. So on Thursday, what we're going to be talking about is basically how everything fell apart after that, and we end up with shoguns fighting shoguns and giant wars and burning down the capital city 7 times and everything falling apart and the population of Japan dropping precipitously and all of the crazy things that we sort of start thinking about when we think about Japan happening. Basically, we're entering a period of time, about 250 years of civil war in Japan. So Art Mara, welcome in. Brief us on what we were doing. I hope that's what I just did. If you have any questions, as always, you're welcome to ask. If you see the little thing that just popped up there in chat about having questions, you can see areas there, and you're welcome to throw in whatever random question you want. We really don't have rules here. As long as you're a decent human being, I think we'll all be okay. We were about to learn about the alien spaceship under the ice. So, Mara, if you're referring to the classic John Carpenter's The Thing, that was in Antarctica. So we're on the other end of the poles here. Learn about all the cool spears stuck in the ice and bacteria that's now melting. Yeah. All of the weird things that are going to potentially come out and kill us that have been stored in the permafrost for the last, 10,000 years. Is it Arctic or Arctic? It's Arctic. There is a C there. Right there. Arctic. Also, Cherry Round, what's up? Good to see you. It has been a minute, as they say. And then it all fell apart. A short history of the human race. Yeah, pretty much. What's up, Junk Collector? Good to see you. I saw Paradox Moose come in, too. Hey, Paradox Moose. What's up? This is where Santa hides his ice palace. Yes, and all of the toys that I never got as a kid. That jerkface. I wonder if Pythias ever learned how to ski. Probably not. The first episode of the new Shogun TV show was released today. It's been getting very good reviews, although you haven't seen any review from Historian. I have heard a lot of people buzzing about it, Viper. I have not seen it myself either, so I don't know how it's going to be. I will almost certainly wait for the entire series to be out. I have been spoiled by modern convenience, and I don't want to wait a week between episodes anymore. So I will wait until the whole thing is out and then watch the first episode and see if it's any good, and then potentially binge the rest of it. Or it might end up like Rings of Power. Right? Do I play Paradox games? Mara, I'm not 100% sure exactly what those are, but you're welcome to elaborate, and I'll let you know if I do or not. So now the next viewer exploration has to be Antarctic exploration, right? As long as I can do the entire thing as a dramatic retelling of H.P. Lovecraft's Into the Mountains of Madness. Right? Time for a Klondike bar. Something like that, right? I don't know if I'd actually want to do... I think I said this off the top. Also, hey, Tad, good to see you. This is not a topic that I was super excited to do in the first place. Arctic and Antarctic exploration, not really my world. Not that I don't love all of history. It's just this is not anything that I would be self-motivated to study. So I would have to do a lot of research on Antarctic stuff as well. Paradox is a game studio that makes them. Could you give me a list of specific games that they've made? I'm really bad, especially when it comes to like smaller indie games, of just playing the game. Oh, you posted above. Europa, Crusader Kings. I have not played any of those games. I think I have Europa Universalis, like one of the versions of it, for free on Epic or something like that, but I've never played it. I've played Age of Empires, and I've played Civilization. I will occasionally play games that are based historically stuff. Like, I've played all of the Assassin's Creed games, right? Well, not all of them, because I haven't played the most recent one, which is Mirage, but I'm currently playing Valhalla, which is not historically based at all, but you know what it is. Oh yeah, so the thing about like learning history is you just figure out how to learn history and then you just go do stuff. I could make a very convincing presentation that makes you think I'm an expert in this stuff, and it would just take more effort because I'd have to go do all the background stuff, right? Don't play them, they're black holes for your spare time. Yeah, see, that we'll talk about that stuff, but like I didn't know exactly what Arctic exploration was, so I just did the whole thing. Which is how we get back to Pythias, who was a Greek guy who was supposedly the first person that we know of to travel to the Arctic Circle, according to his story. But he was writing at like 320-something-ish BC, And we don't have accurate maps of where he sailed, and we don't have even a reliable version of his own story. We don't even know for certain if he even really existed. This is the great part of history. Sometimes we can't really tell. The only source attributed to him is the story of him sailing around looking for where tin came from. And apparently at that point he sailed up to the point where all of the water was ice. And that seems to indicate that he was, in the Arctic Circle. So maybe, I don't know. Probably not, though. But that's Pythias. Ba-dum-bum. Everybody's donating to the photo stream. Don't play them. Mirage is sick. I'll get around to it eventually, John. I'll eventually. I'm so far behind in games. I got behind on games when I got married because we didn't have just tons of money for me to go spend games or to go buy games. And then by the time we got money, I started a master's because that was the wise thing to do. Like as soon as we had the money to spend, I wouldn't spend it on education. So that was like 3 years where I pretty much didn't play anything involved because that was my history master's, and that one was rough. We also moved in the process of doing that, and I got 2 new jobs in the process of doing that. So like that whole 3-year stretch added on top of and complicated the previous not having money scenario. And then I started teaching at a university, and they wouldn't hire me on full time, and I was just working IT, and they weren't paying me enough. So then I got another job teaching at a college. And when I got there, I was there for like 2 years, and I was like, okay, I need another master's. So there was a brief window of time for about 3 years where I was catching up, and then I got another master's on top of that, and that put me behind again. So I'm always like 6 years behind on games, just about. I'm also a cheapskate, so I won't pay for stuff full price anyway. So like I think the newest game that I've played so far has probably been Ghost of Tsushima. I played that last year, and I think it came out in 2021. So I was only like a year behind on that one, but it was a samurai game set in medieval feudal Japan, and I'm just not going to pass that game up. And I did actually wait for that to go on sale. I got the full director's cut with the DLC for $20 Christmas 2 years ago. So still trying to keep as much as I can to my cheapskate ways. You learned about the Abbasid Caliphate playing the latest Assassin's Creed. Yeah, cool. We talked about the Abbasids quite a bit on stream here. He's already going to sail beyond where all the water was ice. That's true, Viper. It's very true. Genuine question. If someone didn't sail up there in that fashion, why would they include that detail in the story? Michael Howe, that's a great question. The answer is the source itself might have been written way later, and somebody was trying to make it up. Also, there are always going to be stories about the scary cold north just because the north is always colder, right? And the Greek people that were living in the classical era around the 300s when Pythias would have lived had knowledge about a lot of areas around them, right? They knew that Russia existed. They just didn't really know very much about what was going on up there. But even in Greece, if you get up into the higher elevations in the central part of Greece in the mountains, lakes and rivers freeze over, right? So they knew about water ice, and they knew about how things would, sort of pack over. So that had experience to that in a functional way in their own life. And if I was trying to say I went really, really far north, what if a way to brag about going really, really far north was go like, hey, during the winter when the pond freezes over, dude, I was so far north that the entire ocean froze over. And people were like, holy crap, that's amazing. And they're like, I know. Right? Let's not forget that people lie, right? Human beings are human beings, and we've been Homo sapiens for 270-ish thousand years now. And our capacity to stretch the truth for our own benefit is not something that we just invented in our lifetime, right? People in history make stuff up. It's just like people today making stuff up. But what's crazy is that some people will hear me say that, and then they'll go, well, I knew we couldn't understand anything in history. Now I know. I just knew it. I knew it. That guy right there, and he's a history guy, and he said it. And that history guy said that we can't even trust it. And if he's the guy that's trained in to do it, he said we can't trust it, and we can't trust anything. Because I knew that the government was lying about everything anyway, and I knew that the Illuminati was out there, and they're trying to do that. And they are always out there trying to hide the truth, right? We can know a lot of things in history. We can know a ton of things in history. We do know a lot of things in history. We just don't know everything in history, right? So there we go. Good old humans. I went so far south that the entire ocean was steam. There are stories, right, where you go so far south that the waters are boiling, right? So Viper, I know that was done in a bit of a ha-ha thing, but we actually have stories like that where it was just so hot that the water was evaporating, and then there was just no water at all, right? Our boat was just being pulled across sand. There's a good clip. Yep, there's one for a good fan. Would we have discovered the magnetic North Pole first? DCI Banks, I don't actually know the question to that, or the answer to that. We knew about magnetic north way before a human being got to the North Pole on land. We've known about the magnetic North Pole since like the 1600s, right? Or even probably back before that. Probably, well, I mean, so here's an interesting question, and the question goes sort of like this. If we know that compasses work, do we know about the magnetic North Pole, right? Or do we just know that compasses work this way? The scientific delineation between the fact that there is a North Pole and it's not exactly the same as the magnetic North Pole, and in fact the magnetic North Pole actually sort of moves around a little bit. I don't actually know when we made that particular discovery, but I would suspect, this is just my gut, that we would know about the magnetic North Pole prior to a human being actually making it on foot to the North Pole. But that's just me guessing with a academic guess. I could do an entire stream in that accent. I don't know about that. The idea that our lifetimes will someone be someone else's history is mind-blowing. Yeah, I get it. It's kind of crazy. And see, I know this is one of those things that like sort of went around the internet in meme form, and everybody was like, oh. But I think it's really true, and I think that it shouldn't have been taken as like goofy meme-y as it turned into. But there was a thing going around the internet that said everybody is worried about going back in time and stepping on a bug and changing history, but nobody really understands how much power you have right now to change history for the people in the future, right? So I think there's a lot of accuracy in that. We are building the world of tomorrow, and a lot of people think that if we just wait long enough, it'll get here. Without understanding that they could push a little bit and work a little bit harder, and it would get here faster, right? If I watch Tenet, that is already someone else's history. I haven't seen Tenet yet. I heard mixed reviews about it, and I do think Nolan sometimes gets a little bit too much, so I didn't go watch it. And I don't even know if I want to watch it, so... When Viper was a kid, he used to think there was a pole stuck in the ice at the top of the world. There is, but it doesn't go all the way through, right? Naturally occurring magnets are a thing, and people would have known about those. Yeah, exactly, Junk. That's what I'm thinking about. Like, what's the delineation here of knowing? We'd have to get into a little bit of a discussion about the philosophical concept of knowledge, right? And we'd need either Noger or Ivan or Eris or all three in here to correct me when I say things that are 1 degree off of accurate, because we all know that philosophers understand the value of 1 degree and will argue about that value ad nauseum. I say that with absolute love because I'll be right in the middle trying to mess all their logic up. I really like the movie, not quite as emotionally fulfilling as some of the others, but the ideas are fun and mind-bendy and very trippy. Interesting. And that concludes the postmodernist era class. Now, starting in 2016, we have the postmodern absurdist era. Yeah, pretty much, right? Knowledge and then forgotten knowledge, and then relearning the same thing until somebody finally writes it down. You just described about 250,000 years of human history, Allie. You would never. I do it excessively. What's up, Noger? Right. Okay, so where were we? We stopped with Pythias, right? So how about people that we know made it up there, right? How about people that we know made it into the Arctic Circle? And we could talk again about my homies, the Vikings, right? We know that the Vikings are exploring all of this region fairly extensively, going all the way back to the 700s and 800s. We know that they make it to Iceland and this region over here called the Kola Peninsula. So the Vikings obviously go this way, and a lot of people talk about the Vikings going in this direction, right? But the Vikings also went in this direction, and a lot of people do not talk about that at all. So this region right here on the back of, well, so this is Finland, and this part over here is Russia. This region right here is called the Kola Peninsula. This was actually sort of a jumping off point for further Arctic exploration along the northern coast of Russia. But the Vikings made it over here as well. So this whole region around here is the White Sea. Vikings are going to be all over that. They're going to also go all the way to, Greenland and all the way over here to Canada by the time we get to the 1000s. Of course, we have the Vinland. The Vinland colony over here in Canada was it Anal Meadow? Crap. I should know this word. Something Meadow. Lansal Meadow. Yeah. My French is so bad. Began with the forging of the Great Rings. Hey, we can talk about some Lord of the Rings stuff, Michael. I don't know if you're a big fan of Tolkien, but I'm a giant fan of Tolkien. So much so that if Stephen Colbert isn't in the chat, and I don't think that he is, I would argue to say that I'm probably the person in the chat that knows the most about Tolkien. And I'd say that pretty confidently, unless Stephen Colbert is in there, and that guy knows a lot too. And I don't think Mr. Jim is watching, but Mr. Jim is a guy that I know that knows more about Lord of the Rings than I do. So there are only a few people that I know, but I'm really big into it. Anyway, so the Vikings are exploring everything. The Russians also. Russia's a big old place, and during the medieval period, the Russians are sort of establishing themselves as a country and doing a lot of things. Within Russia, there are a whole bunch of different people that are doing stuff that is going to further Arctic exploration. There's a place over here on the Kola Peninsula called Pechenga, and some Russian Orthodox monks are going to make a monastery out that way by about 1500. And that place is actually going to turn into a little bit of a port that other people are going to use as a place to sort of set off on adventures, exploring additionally into the north. And a group of people that are going to be specifically involved in this are going to be called the Pomors. This was or I guess is because they're still around today. The Pomors are an ethnic group within Russia that lived along this northern coastline, and they're especially good at sailing, and they're sort of especially hardy, and they really dug exploring the coastline. And they did this partially through use of these cool little boats that they have that are called kochs. And it's spelled Koch. But it's these little, very small hulled very low draft ships that are going to be very maneuverable. They're able to fit through a lot of the shallow waters. They're going to be able to maneuver around things like, ice flows and icebergs and things like that. They can sail fairly close to the coastline. And these little guys make a really nice addition to the Arctic exploration world. And they're going to be responsible for a whole lot of movement when we come to doing things like mapping this northern coast. The city of Arkhangelsk, Archangel, basically, in Russian, is one that they're going to use as a base, and they're going to explore the Russian coastline all the way up to the Ural Mountains. So all the way over into this region right here. So these are the Urals. So these people are basically mapping all of this, and all of these islands around here are ones that they're going to sort of be involved in exploring and mapping. But that's like halfway across the Eurasian continent that they're going to make it. And this is all being done in like the 1700s, right? So this is before a lot of the fancy stuff that a lot of people would know about Arctic exploration is already happening. So you have the Pomor people that are exploring all of this region, a couple hundred years before a lot of the other big name people would have jumped on board. So that's pretty cool. Now, when we get to this 1600 area of time as well, and especially once we get into the 1700s, one of the things that becomes sort of the holy grail, if you will, is this hypothetical thing called the Northwest Passage, right? Europeans had discovered the continents of North and South America in the 1400s with Columbus. By the 1500s, they're already colonizing most of this area. And there's a thought. What if we could get around North America, right? The passage around South America was known first. This was mapped, all the way back into the early 1500s. People had been around here. Magellan is going to do this in like the 1520s. So what about up here? Can we get around North America this way? And people spend a lot of money and a lot of effort trying to explore, looking for this Northwest Passage thing. And one of the biggest reasons they were doing this is for economic purposes. South America had effectively been gobbled up by the Spanish. They controlled most of the territory there. The Portuguese had Brazil, and there are a couple of smaller colonies, like the Dutch have Suriname. There's French Guyana. But honestly, moving stuff around Spain means moving stuff through Spanish waters, means moving things around an enemy territory, right? So during this age of exploration, when we're operating globally under this big economic structure called mercantilism or mercantilism, however you want to say it, moving your goods near enemy waters was just scary stuff. It's also not a very easy trip to make it around South Africa or South America. This region down here especially gets rather stormy, and the Strait of Magellan is not the easiest body of water to navigate through. So countries like England and France and the Netherlands are really interested in trying to find a way through here. Can we get through North America? But what this is going to unintentionally do is explore all of this area and map it a lot more. And there are a lot of really big name people that get involved in this. French explorer Jacques Cartier is going to be one of the first people that does extensive studying of this region and mapping a lot. Of course, Henry Hudson, who was originally Dutch but hired by the English to explore, is going to be over here. This big thing right here is Hudson Bay, who's named after Henry Hudson. People like John Davis, English explorer, who's going to make it just about further into the Arctic region than anybody else had at that point. They're all going to be trying to explore this region to find this Northwest Passage. Now, it does technically exist. If we're just being for real, we know that it exists because you can do it today. But the kicker is they're doing all of this on sail power or oars in certain situations with wooden hulled ships. and you just can't do it at that period of time. And it becomes fairly, I don't know, how do I say this the right way? If the French and the English were going to spend money on this region of North America, the better economic investment would have been colonies as opposed to exploration. And they didn't know that eventually. So they did send a lot of explorers out here looking for this stuff. But it became fairly evident fairly early on that there were not going to be easy passages through the Arctic region around Northern America. So what did they do? They focused on stuff like colonies. And this is where we get, of course, the big French claims in Canada and, of course, the English claims in Canada, which go on to make Canada the lovely country that it is today. So that portion of the exploration is very, very vibrant and very active for about 100 years. And then it sort of falls down. They lost a good number of expeditions in the process, I presume. A lot of the big explorers made it back because they lost ships, they lost people, they ran into situations where they were literally frozen in place for months at a time. Usually the leaders of the expeditions would make it back. And they might set off with 3 ships and come back with 1 ship and, only half of a crew with that 1 ship. But usually the person that had been chartered by the royal governments of wherever were going to make it back. Because they were going to eat first. They were the captain. So there was a significant amount of loss of life, but the way that a lot of these exploration events were funded was, to a certain extent, you got paid up front a little bit of money, and that was to theoretically pay for your final procedure if need be, or keep your family on its feet while you were gone. But some of these things might take 2 or 3 years, and you don't know what your family member is doing out on the ship, or if they're alive or not. And you get word back. I don't know if they ate the crew. Cannibalism is something that doesn't get written down very much because it's just so taboo. But cannibalism happens a lot more in in human history than we really want to admit it. I talk about this with my sociology class with my students. Cannibalism, for a large part of human history, is just something that you do, right? It doesn't get written down because they eat the scribes first. The scribes are usually going to be officers of the ship. Usually the first mate is in charge of keeping the logs of the ship. So this is why if you've seen Star Trek, right? And you see, you hear Picard say captain's log. That's to differentiate it from the official ship's log, right? That's usually kept by the first mate. So you have captain, first mate, quartermaster. Quartermaster's job is to basically make sure that everybody's eating on their ration and working the way that they're supposed to. Those 3 people are probably going to make it out. You probably would not be eating the first mate first. You'd probably be eating some low-level, scrawny guy who's at the end of the rope that doesn't get his daily dose of vitamin C because we don't know what scurvy is yet and dies pretty fast, right? Scribes only get eaten in the mutiny. That's correct. Weren't HMS Terror and Erebus just found in the past few years? Matt, I don't know. Maybe. Potentially. You were just making the joke because not everybody was literate. That's 100% sure. That's 100% sure. The literacy rates on these trips would have been very low. Very low. So we look for the Northwest Passage. It's very active for a little while, and then we just don't do it anymore because it's just not economically viable. But that doesn't mean we're not trying to get around the Arctic. And one area that gets looked over quite a bit, and one where I had to do quite a bit of study, so even I'm looking over most of this stuff, is the effort to try to get back around Asia. Sail out of Russia and get back around in this direction. This is something that I was rather ignorant of, and I had to study a lot and pull books off my shelves and start reading stuff. Tangent, you would love the game Obra Dinn. I've heard that from multiple people. I don't know if I have it, but I don't have time to play it right now. I mean, I guess I do have time to play it right now. I guess the correct answer is I haven't prioritized playing that game. But I know that it's sort of like spooky, ghosty ship stuff, and it's supposed to be pretty cool. It's on the list to play eventually, and I'll take a page out of my friend Mac. His book basically, you ask him, like, Mac, why are you buying all these games? And he goes, I'll retire one day, and then I'll have all the time I want to play video games. I'm like, okay, sure. Hopefully I'll get to it before then, right? I'd love to play it, but not right now. I've got so many games. I've got like 15 games that I haven't played yet. I've got 2 or 3 years worth of games that I haven't finished, and that's just in discs. If we look at like Epic Games, Epic gives me games faster than I can finish playing them, so I'll never sort of run out of games. Yeah, so one of the things that one of my friends last year was trying to downsize his video game collection and sold me 14 Xbox One games for $30. I thought it was a pretty good deal, so I took it. And I've got games for days. Games for days. So, it's a cheap thing. I like cheap games. So, I've played 2 of them so far. I've played Resident Evil and Shadow of Mordor. But I've already played Shadow of Mordor. I just played it again because I got the sequel, which is Shadow of War, and I didn't want to play the sequel without playing Shadow of Mordor again because I couldn't remember exactly what happened. So, there's that. Anyway, getting back around Asia. So, again, by this point in the 1600s, most of this region up here is mapped, and we know this. But this region over here is still rather opaque. We don't have the gaps filled in here. So if you bring up the map in your game, this is the part that's still under the clouds, right? You have to go there and travel before you can see what's there. In Assassin's Creed, you have to synchronize your high points to get your map to open up. We haven't synchronized any high points over here yet. So what do? Well, we start looking around. And the English and the Dutch are going to get involved in this stuff, but it's mostly going to be the Russians. And Russia is actually going to take some steps to shut down English and Dutch exploration in this area because they were really worried that the English and the Dutch were going to start claiming territory that the Russians wanted to claim that would be today in modern-day Russia. So the Russians are going to make it very clear that this is their waters, like, watch it, they're one of my waters. And they're going to get really clear that nobody can just go sailing around wherever they want to. But then it's going to be incumbent upon them to explore that area, right? Russian steppes, huh? So this would be like Kamchatka. If we're playing Risk, nobody knows about the northern shore of Kamchatka. Vladivostok was founded around that time, I bet. To the internet. I don't actually know when Vladivostok was founded, but that would not surprise me if it were around that time period, rather. So this would have been like 1600s to the early 1700s. So one of the things that they find out was, hey, Russia and North America, not connected. And we're like, okay, cool, today we know that. They did not know that at the time because they had not been far enough up into the Arctic to completely know, right? 1859. So that's actually quite a bit after the period of time where we would be talking about right now, by about 150 years. So they didn't know, like, maybe up here, if there was a land bridge that would have connected North America to Russia. They didn't know all of this because, again, it's under pack ice. But they figured out that, this bends back around far enough that it's obviously not going to be connected to North America. That's a pretty big deal. Woo! One of the guys that's really important in this time period that discovers a lot of stuff, does a lot of exploration through here, is a guy named Semyon Dezhnev, and he's exploring mostly in the mid-1600s. But also a guy that is important for the research here is a guy named Vitus Bering, right? Bering, of course, is where we get the nickname for, or the, I guess not the nickname, but the actual name for this little part of water right here, which is referred to as the Bering Strait. Bering was exploring this region in the early 1700s. So Bering was not Russian himself. He was originally Dutch, but he was hired by the Russians because of his exploration capabilities and his map making skills. So he was the one that sort of got sent out this way to do a lot of Russian-funded exploring. But that's where we get that. Now, this is going to continue for a little while until we get to the 1800s. And honestly, the story of the 1800s Arctic exploration goes sort of like this. A bunch of people thought they could do it, and they prepared, and then they found out that they couldn't do it, and most of them died. And that's the story that you're going to read about most of the Arctic exploration for the 1800s. You can get into the harrowing tales of how, one person made it out, or one person set adrift in a rowboat, made it far enough south to get into an ocean current, and was picked up by a Chinese fishing vessel. But all of the stories end up with massive hubris being defeated by ice. And I could tell you 14 stories about massive hubris being defeated by ice. And if that was what the intent of the stream was supposed to be, I apologize, because to me that is like the boringest part of the whole story. We're going to continue to do the exact same thing over and over and over again, and we know that those people all died, but we're totally not going to die ourselves, and then they did. Massive hubris defeated by ice, right? It's a tough period of time. The 1800s is marked by massive hubris and then death. And in order to accommodate both exploring the Arctic Circle and getting to the North Pole, FAFO with the ice. Yeah, pretty much. That's their favorite part, dying from hubris. I almost think that's the preferred English death from the 1800s. If we look at British upper class, I think if we classified all of the deaths of British upper class from the 1800s, the leading cause of death might be massive hubris. I mean, you could blame it on things like dengue fever or malaria or grinding, crushing sea ice, but I think that the underlying cause is probably massive hubris. You meant the target audience's favorite part was the failures? Yeah, I mean, I get it, but also, But you know about me. Right, exactly, but you do know about me, right? Oh, Jack Sparrow. So let's talk about some people that made it, right? Like, who made it? How about a guy named Roald Edmondson? Who is this guy? Edmondson was the first guy to really make it all the way around the Northwest Passage. He was Norwegian and probably shouldn't have made the trip when he did. So he set out in 1906 to try to basically sail all the way around North America through the ice. And he was broke as a joke. He was only able to purchase this ship. This ship is called the Gjoa. And it was originally a herring ship that was designed to fish for herring, and he bought it because it was the biggest boat that he could buy with the limited funding that he had, right? The SS YOLO, pretty much. So he did tack on some iron plating to this guy, and it did manage to make it all the way around North America, but it took 3 years. He set out in 1906, and he showed up in Alaska in 1909. That's a long time, and it was ultimately not a profitable trip, because he thought that if I get investors and they pay for my ship and I get to go, I'm going to be able to open up this sea passage that nobody else is going to know about, and then I'm going to be able to draw maps of my adventure, and I'm going to be able to sell these to people that are going to be interested in shipping. And he got all the way to Alaska and eventually found out that it wasn't even a commercially viable route, because it was just too slow. It took too long. The water was way too shallow in a lot of places for shipping vessels that have very low drafts that are below the water. So they couldn't even sail that way in the first place, and they would have to carry too many food stores to survive, which would cut down, of course, on their ability to move shipping goods. So, SS Minnow. Casey Snow Art, how's it going? Welcome in. Hope you're doing well. Canada's most important Nordic research vessel is named the Amundsen, after this guy. You date a biologist who did a stint on it. Fascinating. One night a polar bear got angry at the boat and smacked it a bunch of times, got bored, and then left. That's kind of fascinating. Your ship getting pummeled by a polar bear is pretty high up on the list of random things that you didn't expect to happen bingo. I would probably give that like a 4.5 out of 5 stars of weird, right? If the polar bear had made it onto the ship, I would give it 5 out of 5, right? First time you've been able to make it to a stream. So cool that I stream live and take questions here. Oh, yeah. I appreciate that. If you got questions, let me know. So we're doing viewer requests tonight. Viewer request topic is Arctic exploration. So I've prepared a bunch of stuff, and we're showing photos, and I'm talking about this stuff. But if you have questions about other stuff, tangent us away. It's totally cool. Totally cool. You were taken hostage by the Danish army at the royal castle for 20 minutes in 2017. I was taken hostage by the Danish army at the royal castle for 20 minutes in 2017. Wow. Okay. That's interesting. I'm going to have to ask for the rest of the story, obviously. Yeah, that's a fascinating one. Muffin was with you and can confirm. Did Muffin also get abducted? Or was it just you? Well, I guess abducted is not... So you were... Okay, wait. Okay, now. Was it everybody in the tour group? Was it like everybody that was in the castle at that point, because the castle got put like on lockdown or something? Okay, so now you're just shading the truth, Lumpy, because to me this sounded like a crack team of Danish commandos swooped in, put a black bag over your head, and dragged you to a corner and beat you up and asked you where the money was. If this is just like, oh, I was in the castle and it got put on lockdown because there was a credible threat against the king, now we're just starting to sound a little bit common. I'm gonna downgrade. Did you actually see anybody with a gun? If there wasn't a gun involved, okay, there were people with guns. Okay, there were people with guns. So this is saving it a little bit, right? You were hoping for a war story, right? War is hell. Let me tell you about the time I was at the Danish castle. Right? Okay. All right. So, Roald Amundsen makes it around North America, proves that the Northwest Passage exists, doesn't actually manage to make any money off of it. but does go on to explore a lot of other stuff. This dude went to south the pole as well and tried to do a lot of Antarctic stuff. This guy was all over the place. He was also broke most of the time. But there's another thing that's up there that a lot of people had tried to go after, and of course this is the North Pole. And here I will talk a little bit about some of the failed expeditions because they're marks along the path, and we'll talk a little bit about this guy, who is a dude named William Perry. So, what up with this guy? So, William Edward Perry was English. He had tried to do the Northwest Passage thing and failed. He's obviously going to get beaten by Amundsen. But this is the guy that really starts making headway and trying to get to the North Pole. And he's doing this pretty early on and manages to get further than anybody else for a long, long time. So he gets up to, latitude-wise, 82 degrees 45 minutes north, which is pretty far up there before he has to turn around. And then has to turn around. But that mark that he made held on for basically the entire second half of the 1800s. So there's one thing. Now, I know that people were kind of hoping I would talk about some of the bizarre stuff, and as a way to hopefully appease the masses about all of the weird failed attempts at exploring the Arctic, I decided I would pick one and talk about one rather extensively. And that is the story of this guy. So this guy is Charles Francis Hall. And Charles Francis Hall was part of an American expedition known as the Polaris Expedition. And this was an attempt at making it to the North Pole, and it ended real bad. So, first off, this was funded by the United States government, and this is the early 1900s. The government was involved in this stuff because ultimately by this point we were kind of trying to figure out what we're going to get out of Alaska, right? Like, we got all this land and it's up there, and gold, sure, that's great, but like, are we going to get anything else out of this? Is this going to give us any sort of benefit? This is before the oil boom and before everybody knew what was up there. But it's a pretty bad scenario here. So first off, nobody really liked Hall to begin with. He was apparently a very bad captain and did not get along very well with the science crew that was on the ship with him, specifically with the head scientist who was also in charge of medicine. They apparently had very vocal and very loud and very angry interactions all the time. This was also going to lead to a lot of argument between the crew. We were being visited by the puppy. Would anybody like to see the puppy? It's the puppy cam. Hello, puppy. Hello. You want to look right here? Hey, look right here. Look right here. Look right here. Yeah. Hello, puppy. Oh, there's a puppy waggle. Oh my goodness. Hello, Kaylee. You want to scratch your booty? Oh yes, get over here so I can scratch your booty. And then, what are you doing? It's a big puppy stretch. Hello. Hello. Are you gonna bark at me? Woof. Are you gonna woo at me? Woo. I don't speak furtive puppy glance. I don't know what you want. Use your words. Or go see Brittany. Whoa. That was Kaylee, the resident puppy that owns the house. We just live here, right? We pay all the bills and keep everything clean, but it's her house, right? She's a mess. SWAT arrived and the museum curator arrived and looked frazzled. Okay, well, yeah, I would suspect so. Okay, so anyway, Charles Francis Hall, bad captain, ends up very sick. And in the process of him sort of being sick, there is apparently an attempted mutiny by the science people. What up, Chip? The whole thing goes sideways. Apparently, the crew at one point decided, we're just going to have a feast. And they broke into the food supply and ate, like, weeks worth of rations in one big go. They get stuck in a position where they're sort of frozen in. They finally get their way out, and they just decide, forget it, we're all going back home. And they get back to the point where they're sort of in open water, but there's no wind. So they're sort of floating adrift, and they run into another ship that's a fishing vessel that sort of tows them back in. And then Charles Francis Hall dies almost immediately getting back home, and he's saying the whole time, that stupid scientist guy poisoned me. And there was this big inquiry where a whole bunch of people got called in for questioning, and nobody ever got charged with any murder or anything. But apparently his claim was so strong that his family ended up exhuming this guy's body and running a whole bunch of tests on his tissue, and found that he had been poisoned with arsenic. That he had just this humongous amount of arsenic in his tissues that would have been not natural for anybody in that time period, that would have been exposed for weeks in his food or in his water. So maybe the scientist guy that hated his guts actually was poisoning him. Anyway, the whole thing just went sideways and crazy, and the Polaris expedition failed miserably. Now, there are some people that claimed they got to the North Pole. Like this guy. This guy's Frederick Cook, depicted here wearing fur because, that's how you show that you've been to the North Pole. You wear fur. It makes everybody think that you're legit. Frederick Cook claimed that he made it to the North Pole in 1908. Here's the thing, though. Nobody believed him. He got back from his expedition, and he was doing this on foot, by the way. So he gets back from his expedition and is like, I made it to the North Pole. And people were like, really? Okay. We're going to play about Bigfoot. Yeah, maybe. So they're like, hey, show us your charts and your logs and your measurements and your readings. So Cook turned over all of his ledgers and documents and books and things like that. And immediately people were like, no, you totally didn't make it to the North Pole, because like your charts and your measurements are totally off, and you're not even moving at good intervals. You're not keeping up anything. There's no way you made it to the North Pole based on this data. So Cook was not believed. Now, of course, he said that he went, and he contended for the rest of his life that he did. And then there's this guy. This is Robert Peary, also shown wearing fur, because, again, that's how you show that you're an Arctic explorer. Look, I'm an Arctic explorer. I wear fur. Now, Peary had a bit of a reputation already for being a bit eccentric and a bit of a crazy, weird guy. The coat looks legit warm, though. I mean, I suspect it was. I would probably not be comfortable in it, but I'm a very warm-natured person. So Peary ended up collecting a whole bunch of funding to make an expedition to the North Pole, and he was partially funded by National Geographic. I think we need a pants reveal. You're not buying it. Waltiverse pants reveal, right? If you all don't know who Waltiverse is, that's great. Yes, also, my wife does have quite good comedic timing. Anyway, so National Geographic funds this guy's trip partially. There's a lot of hoopla about him setting off. He comes back, and of course he claims, I made it. And so this is the year after Cook said that he had made it. So when Peary gets back, the people that, looked at all of Cook's travel logs say, okay, Peary, you show us your travel logs, and we'll go through yours, and we'll see if we believed you. But here's the kicker about this one. The National Geographic Society said that they owned his records. And the National Geographic Society said, of course he made it to the North Pole. We looked at his books. We believe him, but you can't look at his books because those are proprietary. Those are ours. Because we funded the trip. He donated those books to us as artifacts, and we're not going to let anybody look at them. Which everybody is just like, this is garbage. Shmonite, you did. You missed the pupper. If you'd like, you can summon the pupper, and I can call her back at all. Your rent, not sus at all. Exactly, right? What up, your rent? Your rent is up. Hey. The modem crashed. That's no good. So, at the time, Peary wrote a big book, and it sold a bunch of copies, and everybody was very much like, Robert Peary made it to the North Pole. Because, that's how everybody in the 1900s talked on the radio. But today, if you ask people, did Robert Peary make it to the North Pole? Most people are like, nah, that dude didn't make it to the North Pole. There's just no way that he made it based on the stories that he was telling. I have a girlfriend. She's in a different school. You can't meet her. Exactly, Noger. Exactly. She lives in a different state. Right? And this is the plot of Aristotle Rating. This is the plot of, was it season 2 of, or season 3, I can't remember. Season 2, I think, of Stranger Things, where the kid has a girlfriend from science camp, and she lives in another state, right? Aristotle, what's up, my friend? Barry Scott's glass eye. That's amazing. That's amazing. Great username. And I'm sure that Aristotle said that we're going to go show some love to Shane, so I feel the love coming in. If you all in the chat are not already following my good friend Aristotle, you really should. This guy's super duper smart. He's got a PhD in philosophy. Is a good person to talk to about stuff because his opinions are both informed and logical, which is rare in today's world. So you should go give Aristotle a follow because dude's stream is legit. And if I were getting done with stream and about to raid somebody and he was on, I would probably be about to raid Aristotle, right? So he's a good dude. You should go follow him. I can legit say that you have a girlfriend in Canada and met her at summer camp. Well, there we go, right? There we go, Lumpy. So you are the exception that proves the rule, right? So, for those of you that don't know who I am, but if you're an Aristos channel, you probably know who I am. I'm Shane. I teach college. We talk about history here. We try to make it fun. Right now we're talking about this guy, Robert Peary, who claimed in 1909 that he made it to the North Pole, but then immediately refused to show everybody his proof, and by us here in chat has been considered ultimately sus and not reliable. But that's what most people think. Most people think that Peary is just like making it all up. Lumpy was torn between both streams. Well, I'm glad that, not Russia. I'm glad that Eris was streaming because everybody should get some Eris love in your life. He's just a warm, cozy center of the universe sometimes for me. So I'm glad that was out there, but I will not apologize for making a regularly scheduled stream. So if we're talking about Arctic exploration, who actually made it first? Who was the first person to make it to the North Pole? There's a Russian guy named Alexander Kuznetsov, and I couldn't find a picture of this guy to save my life. He's a Russian military officer in 1948, and he kind of cheated. He had an airplane that was full of scientists, and he flew to the North Pole and landed and got out and was like, North Pole! And then got on the plane and flew out. So, he was there and he did a thing, but it's kind of cheating, right? Like he flew over the pole, woo! Flew in and took a selfie to show that he was there, right? That's not cheating. You like that? I mean, I'm talking about him, and I'm giving him credit for being the first person there. In 1948, Alexander Kuznetsov was the first person that led an expedition that successfully and undeniably made it to the North Pole. There, I said it. He was the smartest one, just flying. But how about the first person that made it on land? And I didn't know if I was going to talk about this guy specifically until I saw his picture. And then I'm like, oh no, we've got to show this guy. So this is Ralph Plaisted. And Ralph Plaisted is the first person to lead an expedition on land that successfully and irrevocably made it to the North Pole. That dude looks like he could wrestle a polar bear, right? He just looks like somebody that is a polar explorer, right? Like if you said he could smoke a cigar with his nose, well, you know, maybe. That's a fairly large nostril, I'll give you that. But the ice parted before him. Well, he had snowmobiles. So he rode snowmobiles up to the North Pole. So if somebody said picture a polar explorer, that's pretty much, yeah, exactly, right? Green herring. When I saw the picture, I was like, oh yes, oh, he's going in. He's going in. So this is Ralph. Again, he's doing this in 1968. So this is 20 years after Kuznetsov's expedition makes it to the North Pole by air. So he decided we're going to do it on land because we're American, right? Because Americans do things the right way, finger quote. There was more than a little bit of Cold War in this. The story, you know, is fairly straightforward, but, you know, Cold War 1960s, Americans are going to go do things on foot, whereas the Russians flew out. Now, to be clear, this is sort of like we don't talk about that part of the story. He did have snowmobiles, so he and his expedition rode on snowmobiles to the North Pole. They got there. A United States Air Force plane flew over to, coordinate their actual location to make sure that they had made it to the North Pole. Then the plane landed. They got on the plane and they flew back. So they didn't do round trip on the ice. They sort of just like did half of the trip on the ice, right? He looks like a 40s movie villain. I could give you that too, Matt. I could give you that. OG Chuck Norris. Dude just jumped in the air and waiting for the North Pole to move beneath him, right? Because the Earth was going to rotate north to south instead of east to west for him, right? It's the fur. Yeah, exactly. If you're going to be a polar explorer, you've got to have the big fur thing, right? Have I ever heard of / seen the YouTube channel Biographics? I have not. I'm curious how accurate their presentations are. I wouldn't know. I typically, and this is something that's weird, and I know it's weird, and I have to explain this a lot. I tend to not watch a lot of videos on YouTube. I don't spend a lot of time on social media, and during my free time, I almost never spend it consuming history material. The Taiwan Don, what up? Thanks so much for the follow. Welcome to the adventure. So like I don't watch a lot of YouTube series. I don't watch a lot of YouTube channels. I'm not subscribed to a single YouTube channel. I don't watch things particularly frequently on YouTube. The most common thing that I watch on YouTube is music videos, and I don't even really like watching those because I prefer a music player that I can like just put in my headphones and listen to, right? I don't know, that makes me kind of weird because in the modern world everybody watches stuff on social media. But like I know of some people, right? Like I know who Dan Harmon is. with hardcore history. Like I know about Crash Course. I know that there's one channel that does like that's been doing World War II, I think, day for day. So like I know a lot of that stuff is out there, but I just don't watch it. I just don't watch a lot, and that's not a judgment against anybody that does. If I want to learn something about history, I'll go read a book, and I know that's really weird, and I'm very backwards for that. But I'll go read a book, and just to be, I guess, even a further level of weird, I'll go try to find the primary sources. I don't even necessarily like reading secondary sources very much. If there is a primary source about a particular period in history, that's probably what I'm going to go read first. And then I might read translators' notes about stuff, and then I might read some papers about it. But I don't know. I'm to the point where I know enough about history that I'm very particular about how I consume it. And I have learned that one thing that ends up happening with me particularly is I'll watch something and then I won't be able to appreciate it because the whole time I'll be thinking they glossed over that too much, or they're not explaining this in the way that's the most clear. They're not making the connections that they need to with stuff happening outside of this scenario. Basically, I think that I could teach it better, and that's purely an ego thing. And I'm very much willing to admit that it's an ego thing. And I have a hard time enjoying it because of that. It's purely a weird me thing. So again, no value judgment on anybody, just me being weird. And I'm very okay with being weird. I'm very open and clear about being weird. I teach sociology, so I know how deviant my brain is and how crazy a lot of the stuff that I do is. But I've just sort of embraced it because that's who I am, right? I win. A Cold War, indeed. Why was it so much later for the North Pole than the South Pole? That's a fair question, and I don't know the answer to it, Michael. Maybe the fact that the North Pole is ice as opposed to land played something to do with it. Maybe something because the North Pole had... Well, I don't know, like... I don't know. That's a great question. I don't know the answer to it. I guess I should stop trying to speculate and just say, like, I don't know. There's a music video database. Fascinating. Anxious Frog is here for me. What up? You finally caught my stream again. This is Nerd. Hey, what's going on, Mike? How's it going, man? Congratulations on the nuptials and the new job and the positive atmosphere that you got going on right now, man. It's really great to see you doing well. And I wish you all the best, my friend. I was actually just talking about JavaWorks today in class. Good times. Good times. For naval history, Drakenifel on YouTube is interested. I have no idea what that means. Was just curious. No worries. It's just always wonder. Yeah. So like, if there's a specific episode or like a specific thing that you question, I'll watch a little bit of it. But what ends up happening, and this still happens on a daily basis. I'll get a link from somebody, and it's like, hey, would you tell me if this is accurate? And it's like 45 minutes long. And no. Like, could you ask me some specific questions about it? I'd be happy to answer specific questions, but I don't want to just watch 45 minutes of a video and then go like, let me tell you all of the things. Because if I do that for one person, I want to be able to do it for everybody, and I just don't have the capacity sometimes to do that, right? Maybe proximity to other countries / resources. Perhaps. That could be it. I know that there's more food on South America because of things like seals and penguins. Maybe that helps. I know that eating penguins is probably not something that a lot of people are super excited about, but, you know, you can eat a penguin, right? Or did enough people believe that Perry had done it so the thrill wasn't there? That could be it as well, Michael Howe, because there were a lot of people that did believe Perry at the time, today he's largely considered a fraud. I wonder if it's one of those things where people set a bar and you need to travel further. Perhaps. Perhaps. Maybe so. Like, it takes a lot longer to get from the nearest landmass to Antarctica and then to the South Pole, you would imagine. Maybe. North Pole has Russia and Canada and Greenland right up there. Yeah, see, that it's a fascinating question. I just don't know the answer to it. The time investment isn't worth it. Though, to be fair, I think a Stream React series... Yeah, I've had many people say, hey, Shane, you should do reactions to YouTube. On a personal level, that makes me... No. Like, I hate that concept on a personal level. I would rather just eliminate the middle person and just make good content myself that I know is accurate, that I know is approachable while I'm live and can answer questions and interact with people, right? Rather than watching somebody else screw it up and then having to go fix what they did, right? I could just spend that time much more effectively just like, giving you the good stuff as it is. That's just me, though, right? Thanks, man. Took a few years, but you're really happy. Excellent. Pandemic was rough. Yeah. I feel you, man. I've been, just doing the low-key lurk on the social media stuff, and it really does. It brings me great joy, man. I know that you were in a rough spot, and it hurts that friends hurt. But we also get to celebrate when other friends celebrate, right? So, next time you're around, hit me up. We're still in the Berg. We're still doing our thing. So, and if you ever need I know that you got family down here, but we got a spare bedroom. If you ever need a place to stay when you're around, just let us know. You had to deal with a puppy. The puppy is a giant mess, but I think you'll probably be okay. You like pets. The video was about the first Black Arctic explorer. His name was Matthew Henson, and supposedly he actually discovered things before Peary, like a scout, and then would go back and tell Peary how best to continue. Casey, I don't know if that's true, but let me tell you this. Based on my personal assessment of Peary as a person, I do not doubt that would potentially happen, because he was absolutely the kind of shady person that would have taken credit for something that somebody else did. Just ask all the people that haven't eaten penguins. They aren't hard to find. They're all... I don't know if you all know this or not, but my wife has a very special place in her heart for penguins. It's one of her favorite birds. She has actually held penguins before, has held a baby penguin before. And I don't know if I have ever made her as happy as she was when she was holding a baby penguin. I don't know if anything that I will ever do in my life will ever get her back to that level of happy as when she was holding a baby penguin. And it was past the weird gloopy phase. It was in the super maximum cute puffball phase of baby penguin. It was adorable. It was absolutely adorable. And yeah, one of the best moments in my life. Exactly, right? Shane, torture yourself for our amusement. No. I mean, I do somewhat. I let you all torture me within parameters, right? There's a whole bunch of viewer points that you can use to redeem things. You can torture me within accepted parameters. It's okay. You do it for the clicks. Yeah, I feel you. There is some value in debunking bad information. I agree. Since the internet is rampant with nonsense, but I also understand just not wanting to bother with the mess of it all. So there is value in debunking the nonsense, and especially if the nonsense is coming from a very loud source that has a lot of followers, it's even more valuable to debunk it. But what I would rather do, and this is just me. What I would rather do is say stuff like, "Hey, I know that there's been a whole bunch of people talking about this. Let me do an episode where I just talk about the reality of it." And I've done this several times before. I guess what might be the the best example of this that I could give you is back when the war in Ukraine started, when Russia invaded Ukraine. I decided that I was just going to do a special episode on all of Ukrainian history. And I started at the beginning of Ukrainian history, and I went all the way through. That would have been 2 years ago now. Crap. With the specific goal of combating the garbage. Like, this is the real history. This is the actual history. And that's been one of my most frequent watched YouTube VODs. So if stuff like that happens and it hits like big and it has a big impact, I'll pretty frequently talk about it. And one of the things that I do a lot, one of the viewer requests, or not viewer request, one of the point redemptions is what's in the news, right? And I'll pretty frequently at the end of streams talk about stuff that's in the news directly. And we're actually at the end of stream right now, by the way. When we got everybody to the North Pole, that's pretty much all I had planned. So if anybody has questions about anything else or wants to redeem any points, now is a good time to do that. Let me try to catch up with chat. Yeah, marriage is a thing, but holding a baby penguin, like, way up there. YouTube doesn't really address misinformation. There are some great video essays out there, but it's just a mixed bag. 100%. 100% Frog. Like anything on the internet, you have to approach it with a skeptical eye. I agree. Did I ever see the penguin documentary narrated by Benedict Cumberbatch, where he mispronounces penguin the whole way through? No, that sounds horrible. And now I don't want to, like, actually pay attention to that. Ugh, that sounds horrible. But now I can never travel to Russia. This is correct. I've said really horrible things about Russia on stream. Probably never be able to travel there. I said really horrible things about China. I'll probably never be able to travel there either. Casey, I pull news from, like, all over, and I have a whole bunch of filters set up to, like, keyword off of stuff and show me things. If you want to, we have a Discord, and we have a couple of different channels built specifically around news. One of them is history, things that are happening in the news, and one of them is just current events. If you ever want to, like, you read an article and you're like, what is up with this? You're welcome to post something there and link the article. And I can read an article a lot faster than I can read or watch a 45-minute YouTube video. And we back and forth there a lot. I try to say something back to just about everything that's posted. I can't always. But I'll post stuff as well and usually say stuff like, like, this is really cool. Make sure we watch out for this. Or I have really a big, skeptical beliefs about this particular viewpoint. Or this is really interesting. Let's see where this goes. So that kind of stuff, right? All right, Lumpy. Good to see you. Have a good night. What is this reaction thing? Oh, is it just my cousin Vinny? Yeah.
Guy just says bullshit.
Yeah, that's pretty much what I would pretty much just say, right? I don't watch the news. I read the news still, and again, that makes me really weird. I know. I don't watch the news. I don't have cable anymore. I cut all of my cable out, and usually if it's from Fox or MSNBC or CNN, I don't even look at it at all, unless I'm trying to figure out what the talking points are going to be. But I don't know. I'm not going to say that I'm above bias, right? Like, I have bias. Obviously I do, right? But I don't know. I try to stay out of the hectic bullcrap that is today. You haven't watched cable since 2012? I feel you. You never liked watching news, you prefer to read it? Yeah. Yeah, and see, Frog knows about this stuff. Frog, by the way, has written multiple things that got picked up by the AP in the United States here. Did a lot of stuff covering politics and social issues in some of the really big markets in the United States. old friend, good guy. Are you back streaming again, Frog? Are you doing anything like musicy, talky, gamey kind of thing? Because if so, we'll give you the shout out and we'll get some eyeballs on you. 24-hour news cycle has killed investigative journalism. I don't know if it's killed it. It's just driven it underground. Because it burns me up now that you can see preview pages where it'll say stuff like 20-minute read or 8-minute read or 7-minute read, because you know that if it says 20-minute read, people aren't going to click on it. Right? Except for me. I'm the weirdo that's like, ooh, they actually talk about something here, and then I'll go read it. Right? But I'm a weirdo. Okay, so anybody want to redeem channel points? Now is the time to do so, because I'm officially done. I need to stop talking because I still have to teach 3 hours every day for the rest of the week, and we still got another stream on Thursday, right? So it's about time for us to go find some place to drop the kids off. We needed an investigative journalist to find out what happened to all the investigative journalists. Well, in Russia, they're all dead. Also, in Turkey, they're in jail. Turkey puts more people in jail for journalism than just about any other country. I think Turkey has more jailed journalists right now than China does. I think I read something about that. Which is sort of surprising because, like Turkey, they're part of NATO. They're a foreign country that's, on the Western bent. Sometimes. And I love Turkey. I've been to Turkey multiple times, and I love the people over there, but, yeah, not always. You're actually going to start streaming again soon, next week. Okay, cool. So I'll keep the eyeball open. Everybody go follow my friend Frog. Because he's a cool guy. And you should just do it because I say so. I don't even know what he's streaming, but I can guarantee you that it will be entertaining. What's in the news? And I get to pick. What's in the news? Sweden is officially cleared to join NATO. And this is after a lot of really inauspicious rigmarole that went down between Viktor Orban, who is the finger quote democratically elected president of Hungary, and the European Union. And basically what happened here was Turkey and Hungary were holding out for a long time to approve Sweden's membership into NATO. And Turkey wanted to play the political game because Turkey also likes Russia, and they don't want to completely alienate Russia. So they had to play this really tightrope walking scenario here where they had to put up enough resistance so that Russia didn't think that they gave in too easy, but they also wanted to extract as much as they could out of the West, and basically they're going to end up getting fighter jet parts. That's pretty much, well, that, and they got some token position helping to negotiate between Kosovo and the separatists in Bosnia. So, well, no, other way around. Serbia, the separatists in Kosovo, apologies, who want to be part of Serbia. So Turkey's taking a leading role in that, which is going to increase their sort of regional, I guess, clout, who knows, whatever. So that left Hungary as the final remaining holdout. And if we're just being really honest about the situation in Hungary, the leadership of Hungary is turning them back into a post-Soviet republic who's basically going to look more like the Soviets than not. There has been an incredible amount of crackdown on freedom of speech, freedom of the press, freedom of assembly, all of the things that we would consider to be good, legitimate freedoms that we should all have. And Viktor Orban is the leader of most of these movements and has a lot of support within the Hungarian parliament. And he just decided that Sweden didn't need to get into NATO because Hungary said no. They didn't necessarily have a legitimate reason to do so other than they were going to see if they could extort something from either NATO or the EU. And basically the EU gave them a big middle finger and said, we're just going to not play your game. And they they legitimately just called Orban's bluff to the point that they were even going to start cutting off funding from EU funds to do things like, social work in Hungary. And Orban had to, basically roll over and allow the vote to happen. There's not really a legitimate reason that Hungary had here as a country. The support for Sweden joining NATO at the populace level was fairly high. It was a majority. The issue again is basically just Viktor Orban being an autocrat, and I really fear for the Hungarian people if his regime and his political party are going to remain in power. And they're doing everything that they can to hijack the apparatus of government to remain in power. It's obviously something that is causing potentially lasting damage to the future of the Hungarian people. And I really think that he needs to go. He and his whole regime need to go. But anyways, they voted yesterday to let Sweden in, and now Sweden is going to officially join NATO. So there's that. How many points to make you play Carmen Sandiego on stream? I don't know, man. There are some games that I'll play on stream if you want to redeem the points for them, but I don't know. We're going to do more reaction, just chatting about current social events. Cool stuff, yeah. Working in politics now makes me want to have discussions that are more nuanced. Oh, man, you got to be careful with nuance, because if you do nuance, you're going to make everybody mad, because everybody wants something that is broken down into an 8-second soundbite that they can feel good about or hate, right? Sweden getting involved in something is a paradigm shift. What up, Caldillo? Indeed, man, it's kind of crazy. And it's also fair to point out that, Finland joined NATO last year as well, right? We sure do like putting things in black and white boxes. We 100% do. We 100% do. All right, so there's a game. Let's go play Tradle. So we're going to play Tradle. I'm going to go to this button. All right, Tradle. Guess which country exports these products? So here we have, again, one of these tiny friggin' little countries. And by the way, right now, I am not looking at the chat. The reason I'm not looking at the chat is because I'm going to try to guess this without chat's help. Once I make my first guess, then I will look at chat. But we're looking at some issue here. First off, 8.54 million for a gross domestic product for total exports for a year. This is nothing. So once again, we're going to be faced with a tiny little island that's probably in the South Pacific somewhere. I'm probably not going to know where this island is, and I'm probably not going to know anything about this island. But this is the roll of the dice when it comes to Tradle. So this is what they export. They export integrated circuits, carbon-based electronics, office machine parts, rubber. Yep, so, rubber apparel. This is, again, Southeast Asia. And again, I can't see the chat right now, so I don't know what anybody's saying. I'm just talking out loud and thinking out loud right now. Vaccines, blood, anti-serum toxins, and cultures. That's interesting. So there's a $1.47 million industry to make. I bet this is like anti-venom, and I bet this is because they have something like lots of poisonous snakes. But this is me guessing and somewhat stereotyping. Dental products? Look at there. Yeah, I have no idea where this is at all. No concept of this at all. All of the guesses that I would guess are going to be too big because all of the countries that I know that are in the South Pacific are going to export more than 8.54 million a year. So I'm going to have to just guess a random country that's in Southeast Pacific or the South Pacific that might be close to this, as a, just a way to sort of try to guess. With the tech thing, I'm going to guess Tuvalu, because Tuvalu has a significant tech market. This is not going to be the correct answer, but we're going to see where we go from there. Okay, it's not even close to Tuvalu. It's 8,854 kilometers, and we've got to go this direction. All right, so let me bring chat back in and see what chat thinks. No, it's not Luxembourg. All those are way too big. Taiwan is way too big. UK, way too big. Madagascar, still way too big. This is tiny, tiny, tiny. 8.54 million is going to be a tiny little island that has maybe 300 or 400 square kilometers. Kumite. Turkey post-inflation. Oh, that's rough. Tuvalu is in the southern part of the Pacific. People are traveled by nature. 100% they are. Oh, yeah, I agree with you, Frog. I 100% agree with you. The issue there is that I feel like the prevailing opinion of the average internet content consumer is that they don't want to think, they just want to be told. Barbados is too big. This is going to be a really, really, really tiny country. Maybe East Timor. Oh, wow, they don't even have East Timor. Is it just Timor? Oh, they changed their name. Timor-Leste. All right, so we're closer, but we're still not there. So this is not even going to be in the Pacific anymore. Then we're going to be in the Indian Ocean if we're moving 3,000 more kilometers. What the crap is in the Indian Ocean? It's not the Seychelles. The Seychelles will be too big. It's not the Maldives. The Maldives are going to be too big. I mean, I can guess the Maldives because that's in the right direction and it's going to get us closer, but it's not going to be the Maldives. No, I guessed in the opposite direction, but I guessed exactly too far. So, yeah, we're basically an Indonesia region. But I don't know what nations are going to be there. It's not Madagascar. Madagascar is a bigger economy. They have probably billions of dollars of exports. What is the country that borders Singapore that starts with Malaysia? Yeah, Malaysia is going to be way too big. Way, way, way too big. No, it's fine, Casey. I mean, this is testing me. Like, I don't know where else to really go here. So I mean, I guess we could cheat. We could always look at the map and pull up something and cheat. But I don't really like doing that. I think that might be the only alternative, though. Are they going to say that Java? No, it'd be too big anyway, because Java's part of Indonesia. Maybe the Sentinel Islands? Nope, they're not counting that either. I don't think the population of the South Sentinel Island is big enough. No, Palau will be on the other side. Palau would be basically closer to Tuvalu than it would be. So this is so Timor-Leste is on a very small island, basically directly south of Indonesia. So it's still 3,000 kilometers to the west of that. But the Maldives up in the Indian Ocean, it's down south and east of that. So for Palau to be there, and Palau's too big. It's got a bigger group than here. So okay, let's cheat. We're gonna go to. I don't know what Diego Garcia is, but potentially we're gonna cheat. All right, so Timor-Leste is. Let me put on my borders. Borders. Thank you. Is down here. So this is Timor-Leste. So we've got to go 3,000 kilometers in this direction. Let's try this. Cocos Islands. It could be Christmas Island. We can try that too. Let's go with Christmas Island. No, we're still a little bit too far away. So let's try Cocos. The Cocos Islands. Hey, look there. It is the Cocos Islands. So now we're going to have to go over here to Wikipedia and look up the Cocos Islands because I don't know anything about them. The Cocos Islands. Here we go. Are an Australian external territory in the Indian Ocean, small archipelago approximately midway between Australia and Sri Lanka, relatively close to the Indonesian island of Sumatra. The territory's dual name is official since the island's incorporation in Australia in 1955. Have historically been either the Cocos Islands or the Keeling Islands. There we go. Consist of 2 atolls made up of 27 coral islands, only which 2 are inhabited. Yeah, what's our square size here? GDP current. What's the size? How big is this? Capital territory size. Area, there we go. Yeah, 14 square kilometers. Yeah, this is a tiny little island set. It's very hot there. Year-round. Wow. Very hot there, year-round. Year-round. That's ridiculous. I don't like it. Most people are Muslim. Interesting. I wonder if that's left over from some of the seafaring powers like... well, we haven't got there yet in history, so people don't know. Annexed by the British. They were in World War I. Oh, there's a Battle of World War I. Interesting. North Keeling Island. Against the Germans. The Germans. Administered by Canberra. What's the population? I missed the population. What are we looking at population was? 593. Wow. Wow. That's crazy. That's crazy. That's a small amount. All right, so that's Tradle for us. Okay, so Frog says, something I tell a lot of the younger staffers I work for is that it's okay not to have an opinion. Yes, you can just say, I don't know. I don't know. I think social media has given people the false belief that they need to weigh in on everything. Yes, but I think you'll be much happier focusing on the things that you control. Yes, I dig it. I dig it. U.S. military bases at Diego Garcia. Okay, yeah. That I've heard of that before because that was an answer one time on Worldle, which is another game that I can play if you all want me to. Geography is not your strong suit. I'm pretty good at geography, but when it starts getting to tiny little islands like that, Max Zorin has a chip warehouse there, apparently. Interesting, Ivan. Also, Ivan, you came in and I forgot to say hello. Good to see you, Ivan. Oh, man. Thanks, Frog. Appreciate that. Totally humbled to admit that you are no... Yeah, I don't know everything. I recently got in trouble at work for saying you didn't know in a meeting. I don't know, right? I don't think you understand. Not having an opinion is a command. Yeah, exactly. If you don't agree with me, that means you must disagree with me. Therefore, you're a horrible person. Right? That's the way that it works. If you don't agree with me, you disagree with me, and if you disagree with me, you're a horrible person. All right, so we've been asked to play Worldle. If I click the link that way, Worldle. Okay. All right, so nope, wrong one. This one. All right, so Worldle is a game where we guess the country. All right. So everybody knows what this country is, right? I know what it is because I'm weird like that. But this is a country. If you want a hint, this is a country in Africa. If you want a hint, this is a very, very small country in Africa. But that's all the hints that I'm going to give you. I'm just going to go ahead and start answering the questions. So this is Burundi. Yay! And now we get to guess the countries that are around it. Now, you can guess the countries that are around it in any order that you want to, but I'm really weird and I always try to guess them in order. So 1 here, this is the Democratic Republic of Congo. 2 is Rwanda. And 3 is Tanzania. Yay! All right, now we're going to guess the capital. Oh, see, now this is interesting because it has 2 capitals. I wonder which one is this going to pick. Let's go with Bujumbura. Yeah, okay, it's going to say Bujumbura. It has another capital where the government is. I think that's in Gijara or Gijita. Anyway, Bujumbura is the capital. Okay, so this is where I start screwing up because I am horrible with flags. I know it's not that one. I know what that one is, and I know what that one is. What looks Burundi-ish? I don't know flags very well. I don't think it's that one either. This one's weird shaped. Let's go with the weird shaped one. Okay, it's not the weird shaped one. So I'm thinking it's either this one or this one or this one. I don't know. Let's just guess them in order. Hey, there we go. Cool. Yeah, I was going to say, I thought that one was Rwanda. And Uganda's sort of a giveaway because it's got that little bird on it, right? Oh, South Sudan. Maybe that's why I don't know it because it's a fairly new country. So, also, I'm not looking at chat again. I'm doing that thing. What are the 2 most common spoken languages in Burundi? Oh, this is going to be tough. I think the native language is probably going to be the most, but I also want to say French and I also want to say English. Let's go with the native language, which is Kurundi. No, Kurmanji maybe. No, that's not it. Is it Kirundi? Maybe I can't spell. Kirundi. Okay, yeah. Not Kurmanji. I thought it was a K-U-R, but it's K-I-R. Okay, so Kirundi. Now the question is it French or English? I'm going to guess English, but it might be French. Nope, it's going to be French then. Yep. How do I say my name is in Kirundi and French? So this is French. Je m'appelle. I don't know how to say that in Kirundi. So let's try to sound it out. Ijina Ryani. No, that doesn't sound right. Nalasali. Interesting. Makakia. Interesting. Mion Nawachui. Nuguyatara. I'm going to go with this one because that just sounds different. So that's Kashmiri. Interesting. Izina Ryanjini. Okay, cool. I don't know anything in Kirundi. What is the estimated population of Burundi? It's fairly small, so I'm going to go with 5 to 15 million. What is the currency in Burundi? I'm going to go with the franc. I'm going to keep playing the bonus rounds. So Gitega is the other capital. So Bujumbura is the largest city. And I'm going to say that Gitega is probably the second. I don't actually know these cities, so it's really going to just be a guess here. So I'm just going to put this one here, and I'm going to put this one here. I'm pretty sure about these top two. I am not very sure about these bottom two. And I just happened to get them right. So this was accurate, and I knew that. These are guesses, and I did not know that. Okay. So let's check it out. You dated a guy whose brain works that way. Interesting. Moldova. It's the heartland. South Africa, heartland. Rwanda. Close. Yeah, Rwanda was close. Big challenges for those who don't know their country shapes. I'm weird like that. But if a country has two capitals, could it have two flags? It could. Bottom left is Rwanda. You only know because you went to Rwanda. Oh, that's cool. I've never been to the African continent. I would love to, though. I would love to. Swahili and French. That's the problem, though. You're darned if I do, and you're... Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I would rather be informed and come to a conclusion. 100%. It could be Belgian, because it's right next to Democratic Republic of Congo, right? You got to run to get some art stuff done. Excellent. It's good to see you. Good to see you. Well, Opta, what's up? Good to see you. We're actually on the way out. I'm about to raid somebody like right nowish because I'm getting tired and stream is running long, which is fine, but at a certain point, it's time for me to mosey on out into the distance.
Just different things.
Let's go raid Astro Canuck, who's playing with Legos right now. But we raided Astro Canuck a few months ago, and I've been in his chat a little bit. He's a pretty cool guy. He's normally doing astronomy stuff. He's got a really cool set of telescopes in his yard. But he's just kind of hanging out and doing Lego stuff, which I kind of dig. And I also want to reinforce that we could be good friends because, you know, he seems like a pretty cool guy. So we're going to go raid Astro Canuck. When we get there, our battle cry is adventure. And if you have any of those lovely emotes for the channel, you can throw those in the chat. If not, just use lots of exclamation points. Yeah. Next time our stream is on Thursday, and we'll be talking about Japan. But before we go, I need to say thanks to some people that Twitch does not recognize because they don't give me money through Twitch, but they still support the channel, and I want to say thanks. So you can see my patrons there. If you're interested, that's the command for the Patreon link. And you can see people that have sent me books to read. And there's the command for the books list if you are so inclined. Please do not feel like you need to. I'm doing okay without it. But if you want, there they are. Otherwise, I'll see everybody on Thursday. I hope that you have a good one. And, yeah, I guess just take it easy. Love yourself. Love somebody else, right? All right, everybody. Catch you next time.